Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to, is it Aquarius Rising Up? Yes, it's Aquarius Rising Africa. I have you on both, so I just had to make sure. Carmen, welcome back. It's been a while. Shame you've had a little bit of a health downer, so I'm so happy to have you back. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy New Year. It's so beautiful to see you. How's it been going with you?
Wonderful. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
So, are you ready to talk about the witch hole?
I totally am. I mean, I know we started getting like our little claws in the last time. We made an error with the time, so we were actually an hour early, and we have lots of anticipation sitting in our waiting room. So very happy to have everybody here. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Really, really great. It's Friday evening for me, so I got a date with you all on a Friday night. How nice! Do I look nice enough for my date?
Always.
Oh, lovely. Okay, over to you.
I have a friend in South Africa too, because I have Amanda Byes as well.
Yeah.
And people that comment and are following my channel as well. So it's really fun to be connected globally. I like it.
Absolutely. Always fantastic. So we were hammering away with the witches. Now, wow, there's some quite groovy stuff around this, isn't there? But I'm going to hand it over to you because I know that you've got some pics and stuff. So just let us know when you want.
Last time I was like, you got to see this guy, and I brought a picture, and then for some reason it wouldn't share. But let's kind of recap from last time. How I got going on this, I do not know. But the name of the book is Malleus Maleficarium. Look, I can say it now. And it was written in the 1400s by two monks, or whatever they were. And I found out recently, because I did some more digging, I found out recently that one of them, they believe the whole reason, or at least this is the lore. So here, before we get going, I'm going to say, who knows? We don't even know what's really happening in today's history. So this is all, let's just say it's storytelling at this point. But according to some people who have really dug into it, the gentleman, I forgot, I think it's Heinrich Kramer, was one of the original authors of it. Apparently what happened was he was taking a witch to court as a whoever. I don't know how the systems worked back then. And he was taking a witch to court, and he lost. Apparently the witch got away, and it made him mad. And I think he spent like the rest of his life going after witches because of this one witch that got away.
But let's just define. I mean, we're going back a few centuries. Let's just define what they considered to be witchcraft then, because, I mean, we know that women really and men who were making herbs and had spiritual gifts were all considered like we are now witches, and literally burnt at the stake. So what type of witchcraft are we talking there? Well, what type of witch got away from him? I like her.
Let me tell you, that's a whole nother hole too. And that got me into the whole Joan of Arc world. And I was just like, once you start studying, things like keep rolling around. It's amazing. Because I was sitting there thinking about it, and this is a totally off topic, but yet so relevant to today, with all of the people with the identity stuff. Because supposedly she was dressed as a male and, was trying to be a soldier, and that was one of the reasons that they thought she was a witch, which I thought was really fascinating, because it does seem to be a huge agenda for the evil side, right? But I don't know how they could have mistaken her for a boy, because I did look up her height, and she was only 5'2". But I guess French people are smaller. I don't know. But okay, so that's a sidetrack. Um, it is one of the things that did amaze me, though, is how consistent the signature of evil is, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
even as I'm reading it, and I'll get to answering your question in a second, but even as I'm reading it, I'm sitting there going, this reminds me of, today's supposed, we're going after and we're helping people in human trafficking, when really they are the ones involved in and participating in human trafficking. So it made me wonder, as I'm reading it, um, were these people actually witches, or were they just inconvenient truths back then, like you're saying, like the midwife and the tincture maker and all of these different things. However, you and I also know that there's that very, very dark side to
Yeah.
the baby thing, and that's apparently why a lot of them were very attracted to midwifery. And it is interesting, though, because as you listen to it, the way that they look upon women is horrifying. We are these stupid creatures that don't know what we're doing, and we're so susceptible to the devil. And this is why most women are witches, because the devil can easily ensnare them. And it just made me
Hello,
think.
Adam and Eve. That came from the whole Adam and Eve story. Because if you're looking at the Bible story, that's like it's Eve's fault. She succumbed to temptation. So the woman will therefore have pain when she bears children and. So that's really already coming from the biblical stuff, right? So it's
A
just
lot of it was
continued.
anchored there, absolutely. And
Yeah.
that piece that is so dangerous is anything, any tool, any wisdom can be twisted and made to use for nefarious reasons, like climate change, or whatever it is. It sounds so wonderful, everyone's helping the earth, but when you really look at it, it's a control mechanism. And so I do believe that there was a lot of that. And it was interesting because I think the last time we talked about part one, which was really defining how important that they thought it was that the church understand that they are real, and that they and I think that was the reason the guy was so torqued. He was like, they let this girl go, and she was evil, and she was killing babies, and whatever. And so I think that the first part was about that. Then the second part was more about all of the different weird stories. Like I shared some of them last time. Anyone that is interested, you can go back to part one and hear some of the crazy stories. And then I said this time we would chat more about part three, which was the whole court process. But it's interesting because what it seems more like is that's the other thing too, is now there's two different interpretations, two different people that have interpreted it. And the more I read both, the more they were so drastically different, which also brings me back to, are these stories or is this real? I do know it was the go-to book for 2 millennia. So this is the book that they used to be inquisitors. But the last part of the book is basically telling people how they decide who is of rank to be considered a witch and who isn't of rank to be considered a witch. So they spend this long, everything they do is so extravagant, and like the words go on and on for something that's the same story, right? But they're just very detailed, academia, I guess, from back in the day. So they were trying to make a difference between what they called future tellers or seers and witches towards the end of the book. And they listed a bunch of types of whatever you would call it, sins against the church that were what they considered low level rather than an actual witch or a sorcerer. And so there are several I hadn't heard of, like geomancy, which was the use of rocks like iron and things like that, not crystals, but actual like elements of the earth. Another one was hydromancy, which was crystals and water mixed. The next one was aeromancy, which was just air and wind. Another one was pyromancy, which is obviously fire. And then there was soothsaying, which back in the day, soothsaying was the use of animal entrails at the command of Satan, which I just thought was the most bizarre. The whole thing is so strange. And then horoscope.
Animal entrails, sorry, animal entrails.
Yeah.
What do they do with them?
So the use of them in any way, and like I told you last time, there's so many. I couldn't even go through all of the different examples that they would give, but most of the time it was on an altar, waiting for Satan's command, basically.
Oh, okay. So it was kind of like a offering.
Yes.
Offering.
Yes.
10. I find it interesting. I knew I was going to miss it. You said something. Sins against the church.
Yes.
What you were saying, and not against God or Christ or.
Yes. I noticed that as well.
Church. Yeah. You're like, hello, come on.
Yes. Yes. And I'm
so
not.
Anyone who disagrees, sorry, so I want to just like anyone basically who disagrees with the church, because according to the church, they are the ones who are the prophets of God and have literally are the conduits for God, right? So what they say goes. So anyone who disagrees, that's so manipulative.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they pick all of these different things. And so there's a couple more. A horoscope, which of course we've heard of. And there's another one called Herafixy. I might be saying it wrong. And that one had to do with manipulation of the days and time, which I thought was really interesting because I never knew there was an actual name for that, because the Mandela effect or things that are going on with CERN, but apparently there's an actual science or category for it. Another one was augury, which had to do with the use of birds, in particular ravens, which is wild because you even hear stories today of people having crazy things happening with ravens. But ravens are highly intelligent. They have the intelligence of, I think, a 2-year-old, and so they can bring things, they can do things. It's kind of, to me, just a smart bird,
They steal things, anything shiny, they'll steal.
Yeah.
Don't you dare have your keys anywhere near or a shiny teaspoon or anything. But that's interesting because they would then, I mean, a lot of the raven or the crow, that's the same we're talking about, right? We ravens and crows are the same.
And the crow are a little bit different, right?
Yes, but wouldn't it be used like for the same sort of thing? So ravens or crows, because it really, I think it's, when you go to the old crow, she's the crow.
Yeah.
It's interesting because they are very intelligent and they are definitely used, but also for good. I've heard a lot of because they're so smart, they counteract, they can counteract that dark magic. That the negative, only they can, you know what I'm saying? So everything would be the polarization. So the good ones would then be able to counteract the force of the evil ones. That's what I've been told.
I mean, I've heard so many, and I've seen the cutest videos of little kids that just bond with birds and different things, and the birds are literally playing with them, coming on command, following them around. It's kind of interesting. And Carlisle was telling me a story of these ravens that literally saved someone, that this older man had fallen in the snow in front of his house or something, and they just kept squawking and squawking and squawking until somebody came out, and they literally saved the man's life. So wow. I just think that you can't always put nefarious things on stuff. It's just a superstition. It's just something that got in your core that made you afraid. That isn't necessary. But and then another one was called an omen, which I never really realized this is the word over a man. So it's like, oh man, I never thought of it before. And then the last one that they were talking about was kleromancy, and that's with palms or paws. I never knew that.
Palms, as in
Palms and paws, like animal paws. Yeah, hadn't heard that one before. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and that you might like that. And see, what they did is they were clarifying the categories, and they were saying, though these are sins against the church, they are not the type of sins that we're concerned with. We're concerned with the witches that are killing the babies. And so they even gave the example of, in Acts, where this seer, and she's got all these men that make money off of her because she could see the future, blah, blah, blah. One of the disciples got rid of the demons or whatever that were giving her the information, and everyone was very upset about it. I mean, not the disciples. But they just used that as an example. Like, look, they didn't go and, string her up like a witch. They just got rid of her demons. And so there was a clarification or a difference. But yeah, the women are stupid. The men are smart. The sorcerers, or the what they call them. I think they call them sorcerers.
yeah.
They were the ones that knew the rituals, or knew the formulas or the incantations or whatever. And then the women were more, it seems like there could be some undertones with weird sexual stuff too, because they were talking about how so many of these inquisitors were most curious about the virgins who had been raped by the incubus or the succubus. And to me, that's a very bizarre category to close in on. Yeah, and then they would go into these weird, it can't happen. Incubus and succubus cannot happen to a married woman, because incubus and succubus, know the line. They know that girl's married, and it's when a woman has sex with other people. But then in the same breath, they'd be talking about the virgins that, had these incubus or succubus coming after them. And they did admit that you could be cursed from birth by midwives. So these dumb women, it might not be their dumb fault.
I wanted to actually ask you about that. That was actually a very interesting point, that a lot of the midwives are witches, or were witches then. And it would also brings to fore, in my mind, obviously where we're at right now with lots of things going on, because of course, if they're going to be the first ones to catch the baby coming out of the womb, I mean, they have first access to that child, and especially if it's a child they desire for whatever purposes and reasons, right? So they would then, because it's like they'd be able to transfer energy, spells, trickery, whatever, to that baby as it enters.
Was that because you're right, that is what, and it is real. I mean, you and I know that there's a darkness and there's a spiritual war, and we are at war. But one of the things that apparently these midwives would do is they would either curse them at birth somehow, or when checking on the mother, the baby would accidentally die, or something would happen. And they said that it would most often be through poisoning. And I think we talked about that last time too.
Sacrifice? Would that not be part of the sacrifices? Because, I mean, we're hearing a lot, I mean, when we speak into survivors and stuff, especially those that are hierarchy or bloodline, and they will have to very, very often sacrifice, and that firstborn right there is very often sacrificed right there in front of them in the most obscene way. So maybe that would be the sacrifice, right? They would have to, that would be the sacrifice they would then give to the Dark Lord, and maybe through poisoning, who knows? I mean,
Yeah,
it's interesting
you
because
just
they
look
like
at
blood, too, don't they?
the predominant way that evil can operate and affect without people being able to see it is poison. So you think about pharmaceuticals, you think about injections, you think about surgeries that, you know, things are put inside of people. You think about all kinds of ways that they can poison the air, poison the food. You know, it really is a very stealth way to operate and confuse humans who don't think that evil and succumb to whatever nasty deed that they had. And I think I told you last time how the one guy, he couldn't have any children, and his ex-girlfriend had put a spell on him and put it in his well and his water, and she put a charm actually at the bottom of his well. And so, you know, that water was being what would you call that? No, it was turned into an operation that him and his wife weren't able to have children. And then when he lies to her and says, "Hey, I'm able to have children. I've had 3 children," because he was trying to make himself look good. She gets all mad and confesses to it. And then he goes and finds out that he had, you know, something literally in his well water. So it to me, the thing that was mind blowing is how many of these signature moves of Satan are just like run through the tapestry over and over again. Even, oh my gosh, I forgot about this one until just then. What I did is I listened to the audiobook. So anyone that's interested, there's a full audiobook. And to prep for today, I went ahead and listened to it again. And right towards the end, like around 2 hours away from the end, they were talking about the cooling of the earth. They literally were talking about the cooling of the earth and how the earth is cooling down. Everything's going to end, which made me very suspicious of them, right? They're the ones in charge. Oh, and that led to, I was telling my son this morning, it really is a crazy hole. Then that led to, what's the name of the guy that created the printing press? Was it something with a G?
You got me. Anyone in the audience knows who created the printing press?
Yeah. So during the time that this was being translated, they what was his name? It's just not coming to me. Anyway, he was literally, you know, creates this thing. There's all of these people that are Gutenberg. I knew it was a G. Yay! Thank you. And so you look back at this, and he was literally the one that invents the printing press, but it gets taken from him, stolen from him by some other, you know, group. And it just reminds me of these corporate barons, you know, fighting over things. And back then, imagine the printing press. I mean, that was propaganda at its highest and best level.
Absolutely. Wow.
Yeah, it's very incredible. Very, very interesting. And then too, the guy, like I said, the Montague Summers, last time I was talking about how odd he looked, he reminded me of, you know, the guy with the eyebrows, Michael Aquino. And so if y'all could put the picture up so everyone can see it this time, that would be awesome.
Yeah, Morné is in the background. He'll pop it up now.
That would be awesome. And I sent a couple of other pictures because I couldn't believe how prolific Montague Summers was. And that was the other thing that I thought would be fun to chat about today. And then I found out, so I think you remember I connected you with one of the women from Canada, the Plymouth Brethren. Yes. Okay, there he is. Can you see him?
Yes.
Okay, and this is not normal. So one of the things that people noted about Montague Summers was that, one, he had this very unique hairstyle that he always did. And it doesn't look
Yes.
like he's got little horns on the sides of his head. And apparently he also dressed very, very bizarre. He was he was a part of I think they called it the reclamation time, where he did something like 15 or 18 plays. So he was very prolific in that. But he started out as a Plymouth Brethren, which surprised me. And he was in Virginia, what was it called? Richmond, Sussex. And I guess that's where Aleister Crowley was too, like they crossed paths. And Aleister was really interested in his book about vampires. And there's lore behind him too, which is very creepy. They said that he used to be seen at night walking either with a very large dog or a little boy. And I was just like, oh, that does sound so creepy.
Like proper him, like proper him himself walking with a large dog or a little boy.
Yeah, one or the other, never both. So it sounded like werewolf.
I was going to say, I shudder to think what was happening and who was who. Yeah. And what was going on there with those. This guy looks, that's a very, very bizarre energy.
Yeah. And so then he also dressed very bizarre. He, you know, always got into the wearing black. He was a Plymouth Brethren, but decided to leave that and become a Catholic. And when he became a Catholic, he decided to become a priest. Well, his biographer apparently could not find any confirmation that he was legitimately ordained through the Catholic Church. And he surmised that what must have happened is when he went to Italy, when he went to Rome, that some weird one-off, you know, fake person ordained him. But he went around saying that he was a priest, and you know, I think he died a priest in his mind. He also was
in his mind.
He also was the father of horror. You know, if Morné could show, like I took some screenshots of all of the different books. The Supernatural Omnibus being a collection of stories, the 6 ghost stories, the Gothic Quest, a history of the Gothic novel, the Discovery of Witches, a study of Master Matthew Hopkins, Vampires and Vampirisms, the Werewolf and Lore and Legend, the Vampire and Lore and Legend, that same one, Witchcraft and Black Magic. Let's see. A Geography of Witchcraft, Popular History of Witchcraft, The Supernatural Omnibus, Volume 1, Hauntings and Horrors, The Vampires of Modern Greece. So the guy, oh, there's more. The Physical Phenomenon of Mysticism, Victorian Ghost Stories, The Grimoire, and The Vampire in Greece. Oh, and there's more. I mean, look at this. That's crazy. The Bride of Christ.
The Werewolf.
And then, oh, and look at this. I mean, I'm telling you, the guy was crazy prolific. And they used to call it, they called it goth or gothic writings, when really it was the original horror. You know, the original, that's, you know, basically what he shared. I'm trying to remember what else I sent him. I think I sent Morné one more thing. But I don't remember what it was. But I could not believe how prolific he was. Oh yeah, I wanted to read this because so the deep hole was crazy. But what I found was there was a book like auctioner, and they had a copy of Malleus Maleficarium from like the 1400s for sale there. And it was like something like $42,000. If you can go back one, I wanted to read that aloud. So the papal bull or decree issued in 1484 by Pope Innocent specifically addresses the malign presence of witches and witchcraft in the Holy Roman Empire and authorized a formal inquisition into their activities. It was one of several official condemnations of heretics and other enemies of Christendom. The primary author of Malleus Maleficarium prefaced the second edition Witch Hunting Manual with explicit permission. Scholars argue that he considered it likely to bolster the work's authority with local rulers and clergy. The reputation of Pope Innocent is affable but corrupt and politically weak pontiff did not necessarily strengthen the bull's justification. I thought there was something else that I had in there. But anyway, I just thought that was so fascinating that copy of that book is going for tens of thousands of dollars. And I think anyone that has an occult library would find what he did fascinating. The other thing that the end of like the part 3, the thing that they also, it just gets back to the hatred of women to me, but they literally, any woman that came and said that she flew with Goddess Diana, or she could fly, or that she went anywhere, and they called it flying, but I think it was astral travel. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so absolutely. I think that's where the whole broom, the whole broom.
Yes, it makes perfect sense. A witch on a broom. Yeah, and they obviously would have just created this icon, you know, for humanity, so that we can wrap our little brains around that. Because really, for us to understand that is quite. I mean, we've been. I'm going to say dumbed down a lot when it's come to spiritual matters on this planet, and of course we have to create these images for ourselves so to understand things, make sense of it. And definitely, it's so true, Carmen. I think you hit the nail on the head. The nail on the head, yes, the nail on the head. That I do believe is where the broom comes from. It's that astral travel.
Because they had to be able to, I guess, explain it in a fleshly or worldly way.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. So we can understand it.
And apparently a lot of them claimed similar things, you know, flying together as a bunch of women with Goddess Diana, you know, this war goddess. It was just
It's no wonder they called us stupid. They could call women nothing else, because they really just didn't understand the power. They were actually so terrified, you know, of the power that these witches could do, you know. And I'm not talking about killing babies now. I'm not talking about that kind of thing or doing shitty things to other people. Yeah. I'm just talking about the woman when she has the you know, her intuition. She knows that remedy can cure that. So she'll pick that and put it together and say, there, it's a natural thing. Now she's a witch, you know. So it's very, very interesting. Anyone who had a connection to spirit, to nature, to God, and was using your God-given intuition is considered a witch. And absolutely, you know, when we talk about the teleporting and the broom riding, it makes sense, because that would really be someone, and I'm not saying all people who remote view, or not even remote view, I'm talking more astral projecting. Sorry, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. You know, when someone astral projects, that's really because they actually believe, and if you're looking at what they're doing from the dodgy ones, they don't believe that they have it in them to actually know and perceive and intuit something. You don't have to go and physically be there with your spiritual eyes and your nosy Parker nose to see what's going on, to know what you will know. That's not a good place to be, or that's a fantastic place to be, or absolutely a beautiful opportunity awaits. Go in that. You know what I'm saying? Your intuition tells you these things. You don't have to astral project. So that's how they made it, didn't they? And the witches who weren't in and the women, let's say, who were of the dark, who weren't in alignment with Christ and the Holy Spirit, would have then obviously been in alignment with Lucy himself, who says, okay, well, the way to do it is just to get on your broom and go there. So it's like the polarization, right? I mean, that's what I see. Yeah.
Well, that's what they're always trying to do. It's crazy. And it got me to thinking about how vulnerable, so first of all, how vulnerable a woman was back then, but not to mention a woman, but someone who had gifts. But then add on top of that, that most people were poor. You know, there was a lot of peasants. And when you are poor, and you are intuitive, you do almost seem magic to other people, right? Someone that's not affected by the way that they live. But I also look at what is an honest, you know, like an assessment of women in general. What are we typically, not women who are accomplished and have mastered themselves, but women in their lowest self, they're very insecure. And I think that a lot of times the reason that these pacts with the devil happened, because even they would admit that it had to come down to a pact with the devil. It had to come down with consummating that relationship with the devil. And,
yeah, absolutely.
and so you could see where a woman is with her friends and her friend is, you know, doing better or has food or, you know, whatever. And she says, oh, we'll do this incantation or do this. You don't know, like, other than, you know, you go to church and they're, you know, scaring the hell out of you every Sunday or whatever they do. But I do see where a young person could get very caught up in and make a pact with the devil. I mean, you know, you and I have interviewed people that have made that choice and come back out of it. And it's especially like the pastors that do it, you know, like that ghostwriter that was on my show. I mean, it's just, it starts so tiny and then it just keeps growing. And then, you know, the animal sacrifice and the nudity and all of the different things we talked about last time, which is wild. But one of the things that was really interesting is they're so devout that they have to create all these loopholes on how the devil works, because it has to fit in the framework of the Bible. And so it's actually kind of interesting how they describe the incubus and succubus, because they are convinced that the reason there are so many evil people on earth is because they were born with the seed of an incubus or a succubus. And how that works, it's very confusing. I actually had to write it down last night so I could see it. So it was, hold on, let me pull up what I wrote, because I don't want to say it wrong.
Can you please explain incubus and succubus for the layman?
And so these would be entities that either go after females or males, and they are after them sexually to get them to be in agreement with them, and or to destroy someone's life, or, you know, whatever. And I mean, this is something that's real. I've talked to people who have had things visit them in their dreams, and it is terrifying because it is like a rape in a dream. But that's incubus and succubus, also known as other things, but I'm trying to find where I wrote that down, because I just thought it was so, all right, here it is. So according to them, God did not design them to have children. So they had to do it through loopholes in the procreation cycle. Female demons extract the semen from a man and give it to a male demon that uses it to then impregnate a woman, was how he explains that they did this.
So some shitty entity will go to a man. I'm wondering how he would get the semen, though. Would he then pretend to be a woman that the man has sex with? And
the female incubus or succubus, right? I forget which one's one, one's the other, right? Is the one that has the sex and captures the seed, then brings it to the male one. That's why I had to write it down, because I was like, okay, I'm trying to remember how they did this.
Yeah. Very interesting. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's wild. But yeah, and so it just had me thinking about a lot of, like I was saying earlier, the threads continue through all time. The crazy stuff that's happening now was happening in the 1400s. And there was still, it seems to me, this war, and a lot of it seems sexual. It's crazy how many of the witches were on trial because the men's penises fell off. And I don't know if they fell off, you know, or if they fell down, you know, like I don't know, but that was something that was, I mean,
wow.
over and over and over and over again. And they didn't seem to have any guilt towards the way that they talked about women. It was kind of interesting, but it did come down to a holy war. And they believed 100% that if someone was a true witch, not just somebody that did horoscopes, soothsayer, those people, that they absolutely should be killed and tortured to get information first. And they would torture them like in these horrific ways, you know, like pulling their joints apart and all of those crazy things that we saw, you know, growing up in history books about the witch trials. I mean, that legitimately happened. It's wild.
Wow. I'm just sitting here thinking of the lengths that these people or these things go to. And I mean, it's scary because so many people are so vulnerable to that. And you were just mentioning something earlier on about the younger people, and I was thinking about the teenagers, because teenagers at that stage, a general teenager, I mean, even if you don't have that, you know, when you're going through your I was about to say menopause. No, teenagers don't go through menopause.
Puberty.
Yes. It's like they get angry. They get frustrated. Their parents won't let them do what they want. They've got hormones running all over the place. That is such a dangerous time. That I know is when a lot of these things take place. You know, is when those, because I do believe even if they are injected or whatever type of seed, there's, you know, I do believe it is God that gives life to that seed. At the end of the day, it cannot be from a satanic Luciferian energy that brings life. That cannot be. It does not bring natural life. So even if it is from a dodgy seed, so to speak, there's still that opportunity.
Amen.
And you know, when we let's look at some of the people that we've just been working with, Carmen, and nothing to do with anything or around that. What I'm saying is so much pain and so much darkness that these humans have been through, so many of them with no choice, taken in even before they were born, as babies, as toddlers, as kidnapped, raped, tortured, whatever the case might be, you know, I mean, and yet, here they are. They've turned that darkness, that pain that they suffered, which is, they could have gone to the dark side like the other Lucys are now that are inflicting the pain. They also had that choice. That's what they've been programmed for, right? I mean, if you guys watched my interview with Ash from Australia yesterday, I highly recommend you guys watch that interview. Maybe Morné can post it in the chat with Ash from Australia. This guy has got to be one of my absolute favorite guests. He is incredible. Australian, born to a psychopath, sexually sadistic, pedophile, serial killer father, masquerading as a human rights lawyer in a very high up position in Australia. I mean, hello.
I've seen one with him. That's not the first time you've had him, right?
No, I've had him on, this is the fourth time, but yesterday was because I had to take some of his, I had to take his videos off YouTube because we were under threat.
Wow.
Yes, so they were on the back channels, but then I interviewed him again, and we did a live with him. He explained it so succinctly. He was a monarch, which is bloodline, Australian bloodline, and obviously his gift was emotional intelligence. So he was used as one of these weaponized child soldiers, but backfired on them because he had too much compassion. They thought that being his father's offspring, he was groomed to be a serial killer in Australia. And then he turned that around, and he was burnt. I mean, this guy sat in hospital. You'll see his face is full of burn marks. And he was, that was part of his programming, was to suicide and kill himself as well, And he's under the most horrific attack from Australia, but he's telling his story. And every time he tells his story, he speaks to me. Australia is on another level, guys, when it comes to this sort of stuff. Really, really, really it is. I mean, you have to know, Australia was, when this whole MK Ultra stuff stopped in America, it went over to Australia, or was supposedly stopping in America, went over to Australia, and that's really where the head of that serpent is now. But anyway, I'm a little bit off topic here.
No, that's how my research goes. Off topic. I'm over here with Gutenberg and the printing press, and then I'm over here with Joan of Arc, and I mean, it was so fun.
Yeah.
It was so fun.
My point is that doesn't matter if you're been inseminated with an incubus or a succubus or a lecubus or a lecherus. Doesn't matter. You have that. When I see what these people can do and what they've been programmed to do in modern day, right? I mean, if you're going back to 300-400 years ago, although they were powerful in terms of sorcery, now there's a whole lot of technology added to that. So it's like quadruple, I'm sure, what they were actually going through then. So it really is. And if people like Ash, if people like Jesse, if people like, how many people do we interview on this channel, right? They can, Kerry Saint, who's another Australian, she's exposing the forced adoptions. I mean, it's just incredible what we go through, or what some people go through and what they're programmed to do. But somehow the light in them says, no, we will combat. So that's why I say it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what you think you are. So many people, if they think they're born of a rape or something incestuous or something really depraved, it does not define you at all. And that is really what I see more and more every day, is the bravery, the ability we have. Yeah. With the ability we have to make the right choice. So
yeah. Don't let those define you. And that was crazy, because like I thought about, here's this document that was created in the 1400s, and that one definition, what is a witch, what is heresy, literally destroyed so many lives. So many women were killed, tortured, burned, thousands. We're not talking about one or two. And it was a way of mass killing back then. I mean, they didn't do it just one at a time. They would take 16, 20, however many, young ladies in at a time. And it made me think about the redefining of anything, because it is dangerous, right? When you redefine what a male or a female is, you think, oh, let's just allow people to be who they are. But then next thing you know, it's in your bathroom. It's snuck into your sports field. It's, going all these different ways because of the original definition being false. And when you align with an untruth, there's a lot of damage that happens.
Yeah, exactly. And you really have to be, it's hard to say, you've got to be aware of what's knocking you off center or knocking you off your path. Because when you're in that place of being in the dark and disconnected and in pain and wounded and feel like the world's against you and everything in your environment is kind of saying, yes, it is, you know, through whatever is occurring, there really is no other way. It's hard. It's, you know, you can't see that. You can't see that in the moment. And it's just really, I mean, if you are in that place in your life right now, honestly, the only thing you're going to do and the only thing that's going to work is prayer, is really just to remember who you are, even though you don't feel it. And not a begging prayer, just an acknowledgement. Thank you that I'm here. I don't know what my purpose is, but I'm here and I'm here and I'm here. And I've no idea what I'm doing, but I'm here. So show me. Otherwise, I think I might go mad. Seriously, that's how I speak to my creator. That's how I pray. And then,
well, and that's another thing. At what point is prayer not witchcraft? And I'm not saying that it is, but I'm saying there's that slope, that spectrum of you're doing something in the spirit that you want an outcome for, right? And isn't that manipulation, and isn't that considered witchcraft? And so you can kind of go down all of these really bizarre roads. But I do want to say that Courtney made a really Courtney Walsh in the chat said, love is the most misunderstood and the most powerful true magic, healer and equalizer. Amen. And then there's one more I wanted to bring up, and that's Natural Matrix Therapy said, church also killed these women because husbands died in crusades. Women were left with land, estates, and the church grew there with that power. That is like bottom line.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. That just, of course it did. Of course it did. And you know, then when you look at the ancient Vikings, right? Every year they would go and raid what? The churches. And then when you speak to the Vikings, they say, yes, but the churches always had so much stuff. So because that's what a lot of them did. They stole from the rich and they gave to the poor. And then they said, next year we come back, church is full again. We take some more. So they were kind of redistributing that. Absolutely.
Well, I just watched a movie with my namesake. So the name of the movie was Carmen. It was an indie, but it had a really high rating. So I was like, you know what? I'll risk it. I'll get this. I have no idea what this movie's about. It was so good. It was about a girl named Carmen who had to be her brother's keeper, so to speak. Like, she wasn't allowed to have a life because her brother was a very high up guy in the church, and he ran the church in this town, and she couldn't live. Well, the guy dies, and what happens is, because she was not able to do anything for herself, to build herself any wealth, anything, the church just put her out on the streets that night. They're like, oh, another guy's coming in. His sister's going to take your room. You need to go. And it's really, really interesting because she ends up stealing these huge golden chalices to get money from the church. And it's just a cute story about that whole cycle, how you treat people and how it comes back. You know, it just does.
Absolutely.
And so they're going to get their own, that's for sure.
It's just amazing. And it's like, so like just the dehumanization of women. And I mean, when we're looking again, you know, we've been talking a lot about the forced adoptions and, you know, the way women's children are taken away and, you know, the way women are made to, and especially in the Bible. You don't find powerful women standing up and preaching and doing things. It's always men, right? And women are either mothers or grannies or nurturing or virgins or prostitutes, right?
Yeah.
You don't get a woman that has a sexually healthy relationship.
That's another, oh my God. See, there's so much stuff from this book. There was a whole thing about the whole prostitution thing. Do you know the original alehouses? They supposedly put spells in the beer, and that only prostitutes were at the alehouses. Like, that blew my mind. And the other thing I was going to tell you is there were two books. There was the Malleus Maleficarium, which is the one that I was sharing with you all, but it led me, of course, to another one called Fornificarium. But then when I was reading about it, it said that it meant ant colony or ant hill. So then I started looking it up. Well, this Fornificarium goes back to this woman who made the very first ant colony that you could see between two glass panes. And that's the name. And all I could think about is how that book was named it, but it's supposed to be about witches. He said that, oh, the reason I named it that, you know, having to do with ants was because it reminded me of something in the Bible about the ants. And all I could think about was how these have become like these little ant colony things that they can see us. They can see the way we live. They can see everything that we're doing, who we're talking to, what we're spending money on, and how, in a way, we are the ants, and they're trying to press us in between these two
glasses.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely,
that was really interesting. I haven't read the Fornificarium one, so I can't say anything about that one, but it's wild.
And I'll just agree again with you, natural matrix. Christianity as religion has a lot going for it, but church is the most evil thing on this planet. I agree. I have come to the conclusion, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The church is the infiltrator. Look at the Vatican, the audience room, right? Hello, head of Satan, right there. So they either that infiltrates people in the churches. So they use churches to lure people in. And that's how they infiltrate the people. That's how the church infiltrates the people. Seriously, you've got to look at that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that I had that I thought was really good. I think I covered pretty much everything. Wild that Joan of Arc was so young. I mean, literally so young, and then burned at the stake. I would really like to know the story on that one, the real story. And then what I had something here. Oh, I know. It was so crazy. After I read the ant thing, I'm running down Twitter, and this guy, Wake Awake One, had this post, and it said, "Zombie parasitic fungus takes over insect through mind control. It then uses the zombie for nourishment until it can grow large enough to release more spores in order to infect more insects. Please don't tell Bill Gates." It is a fascinating video. And if you have a chance, he posted it yesterday at like 11:46, and his name is Wake Awake One, if anyone wants to see it. It's a really fascinating.
Wake Awake on
it was ants, and that's what I was like, whoa, that's crazy. I feel like God's trying to talk to me about this one.
Yeah, perfect. I'll definitely check that out. That was fantastic. Yeah. Is that all you have to tell us today? Should we wait until a month until I see you again?
Any other notes that I hadn't gotten through? No, I think I covered it all. I mean, honestly, it was a crazy thing to experience, and it was kind of eerie because I put the audiobook in the chat. So if anyone wants to listen to it, they can. But it's so, like, just hearing the words is just also kind of creepy. I'm not gonna lie. Like, just listening to the way these guys talked and the way that they thought of themselves, and it was just nuts. But I did think that Montague Summers was really fascinating, and couldn't believe how prolific he was with horror genre. And it was all based on true stories, according to him.
Wow. Very, very interesting. I'm certainly going to give that a listen to. Did you post it already?
I posted it in the chat. It was right after Morné posted something for the show with Ash. It's the one. It's the next one under it. I thought somebody might want to listen to it because it is interesting, and it is a huge piece of, you know, the history of
what's happening now.
And like we were saying, like, changing the definition of one thing, and how once you define it as this is bad against the church, or this is bad against the, you know, your grandmother, or this is bad against the earth, we now get to torture you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitions are important, people. Very important.
Very. Yay. Thank you, beautiful Carmen. That was fun. And we shall have you back in a couple of weeks again.
Yes.
With
on the first, we'll just go back to the schedule we were supposed to, but we'll probably be on Solutions, not Aquarius Rising Africa.
Yes. So it'll either be this or Solutions, but keep the watch the space. We will certainly let you know. So thank you everybody for watching. It's Friday night here. And Friday morning there, Friday lunchtime somewhere else. Have lots of fun. Enjoy your weekend. God bless you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.